All right. What is going on, everybody? Welcome into the Sunday edition of the Fantasy Coaches. I am your host, as always, Coach Steve, guys, here talking some football on this great Sunday here. Obviously, week 5 is upon us. We're ready to go. Talk some fantasy this morning here, guys. If you've joined my Sunday show, I kind of just quickly run through all the teams this morning, look for the inactives, and kind of go from there. So, we're going to work on that today. And if you have any questions, please feel free to throw them in the chat and I will answer any start and sit questions or trades, whatever you got for me, I will get to today, guys. So, of course, if you're watching the morning game, the Jags Bills game, it's pretty interesting. It's 11-0 right now. The Jags are winning, which was not expecting that too much, but it's pretty interesting to see the Jags that are ahead right now. But they did get to stay in London for the week, so it was kind of understandable that they might have a fresh start overall to their game. But we're going to get into the nitty gritty of start and sits this morning here. Just a quick 30-minute episode. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to throw them in the chat. All right, so the Texans and Falcons game. This should be a fun game. On the Texans side of the ball, I think you can obviously start CJ Stroud. He's just been on fire as a rookie quarterback this coming season here. And if you're in a 1 QB league, Superflex leagues, you have to start CJ Stroud this week. It's a tough matchup, kind of, but he's just been too good that it's kind of hard to sit him right now in fantasy football. Desmond Ridder, big sit for the Falcons. Obviously, he's just not performing as a top tier quarterback at all or anything into that nature right now. And he's just not throwing he's throwing enough, but he's not producing with the throws that he has. So Desmond Ridder should be off any super flex radars today. In terms of the backfield for the Texans, it really just comes down to Dameon Pierce. Dameon Pierce is kind of enjoying a lot of the workload this morning here in this season so far that we thought maybe Devin Singletary would be able to kind of take over, but he just really isn't. And Dameon Pierce, while inefficient, is still the best back you could probably start as a flex option because he's going to see 15 plus carries, or at least in this game here. Okay, first question in the morning. What's going on, man? Happy Sunday. Yes, I need a solid wide receiver too. I recently made a trade for Drake London, trade away DeAndre Hopkins and Jerry Jeudy. What do you think? I mean, that's a little risky just because what we've seen out of Drake London so far. I think what you're banking on is that hopefully Tyler Heineke starts at some point, and I think that would help open up this Falcons passing game just a little bit because they're throwing the ball a ton, which is great, but we're not seeing the production because Desmond Ridder just really not a good quarterback. So it's a solid trade right now. I'm sure that many people in your league will be like, "Oh, you lost that trade. Why would you trade away Hopkins and Jeudy for Drake London? He's not doing anything this year." But honestly, I think in the long run, you might have a good shot that having Drake London to jump back up to a wide receiver 2 level of value as long as Tyler Heineke plays. And that's what you're kind of looking for. And I think we are getting pretty close to seeing Desmond Ridder losing his starting job sooner than later if they continue to lose these games. And I think this is one of those games where we could see Tyler Heineke come in mid-game if the Falcons are behind once again. So solid trade overall. I think that hopefully Drake London has some more value in the near future than what Hopkins and Jeudy will give us rest of the season. So I don't hate it. All right. On the other side of the ball here, for the Falcons here, obviously Bijan Robinson is a clear RB1. You start him, no questions asked about that. Tyler Algier is a little more interesting. Like I said, I don't really know how this game's going to go. The Falcons seem like they have a better chance of being ahead in this game. But again, you really don't know. I mean, Tyler Algier is really just game dependent. If the Falcons are winning, I think Tyler Algier might have some better value as a flex option, but it's a kind of risky move to take that. I had him as a high end RB4, which is kind of outside my starting zone. But again, he's kind of a wild card in this matchup. For the pass catchers, the Texans, I think you just got to continue to go out there and start Nico Collins. He's really turning into a star this season. It's fantastic to see what he's able to do this year. He's a start for sure. Tank Dell is a risky boomer bust flex option that I like starting. I think there's potential for him to kind of have another strong outing after being kind of doing nothing last week for us in fantasy. So I do like him as a flex option. I think in deeper leagues, maybe 14 and 16 man leagues, that Bob Woods is definitely an interesting name to start this week. The Falcons' one weakness in their secondary has been the slot, and Bob Woods plays the slot majority of the time this year. So I think he could end up having a really good fantasy day overall. On the Falcons side of the ball, like I said, Drake London, we kind of mentioned him already. Not the best day to play Drake London overall. Texans have a really strong secondary. And again, like I said, mentioned with Desmond Ridder, definitely not the best day overall for his ability in fantasy right now. We got another question here. Oh, this is interesting. Zay Flowers and Jamar Chase. Man, I can see where your head is at with this one because obviously what Jamar Chase has been giving us and this whole Bengals offense is just kind of a wreck. And then Zay Flowers has been solid, and they have a pretty solid matchup this day. But I think you still got to go Jamar Chase here. The likelihood that T. Higgins is out is pretty high, and I do believe that Jamar Chase will see at least 10 plus targets in this game here. They need to get something going. The Cardinals secondary can be beat, so I'm still going to continue to rely on that Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase connection where he's going to throw him the ball 12 times in this game, and hopefully he catches at least 7 or 8 of them, and he can do things with the ball once he gets it in his hand. So I'd still go Jamar Chase as a flex option this week. On the, like I said, the Falcons side, I really don't want to start Drake London if I don't have to. I mean, the tight end positions on the Texans, Dalton Schultz, it's not a bad start, but I really don't want to start Dalton Schultz at all in terms of tight end positions. I'm not trusting his 40 yards and a touchdown last week. Kyle Pitts is an interesting one, headache kind of player, fantasy. I'm avoiding him if I can. I just don't trust him right now. He's splitting the role with Jonnu Smith right now, who's a better sleeper option this week, in my opinion. But yeah, it definitely hurts to not have Kyle Pitts as a must start anymore. All right, we got a question from Nathan. Zay Flowers or Christian Watson? Standard league here. Oof. I think if you're looking for more of a safe floor this week, I think Zay Flowers should get enough yardage to somewhere between that 60 to 80 range. I do like that. Unfortunately, if it was PPR, I would definitely pick Zay Flowers, but I still would probably pick him. Christian Watson's more of a boom or bust play for me this week here and in this matchup here, just because, I think that the ground game can work this week for the Packers. And Watson, I don't know what his target share is going to be like in a full game. Like he could see 3 targets, he could see 7 or 8. But he just doesn't have that connection set up right now with Jordan Love. I mean, he caught that touchdown in Thursday Night Football last week. It was a wide open touchdown almost. I don't think he's going to get too many opportunities like that each and every single week. So I'm going to go with a guy who's been producing and has a great connection with this quarterback. So even in standard league, I'm still going to pick Zay Flowers in a favorable matchup. So I'm going to lean that direction for between these two. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate that. Over to the Panthers-Lions game now. This one's another indoor game. A lot of indoor games this week in fantasy football. Quarterbacks, I'd probably avoid both quarterbacks. Bryce Young is definitely someone I'm not even considering in super flex leagues. Just really hasn't performed as standard, and he had a great matchup last week and kind of did nothing with it. Jared Goff, he's an okay super flex 2 quarterback. Again, I think this matchup could be more of an all run, and he doesn't have Amon St. Brown this possible week here. So he's kind of lost his best weapon in this offense here. So I'm really concerned about Jared Goff, and he really hasn't been doing too much in fantasy this year. So I'd avoid him unless you're looking for a QB2 for Superflex. Running backs, Miles Sanders for the Panthers. Would like to avoid him this week. I do believe the Lions will be ahead in this game here, and Miles Sanders is just, he's seeing a good workload, but he's being very inefficient with it. And we saw in games where, the Panthers are kind of behind, that they're kind of leaning on Chuba Hubbard in that pass roll situation. So wouldn't want to start either one of these guys. These are both like low-end RB3 options for me in fantasy this week. You'd have to be really hurting at running back to have to start these guys. Dave Montgomery without Jahmyr Gibbs this week must start running back. RB1 potential here. He's going to see probably at least 18 carries in this game against a very favorable matchup against the Panthers. So I love Dave Montgomery this week. The Panthers pass catchers, you're really looking at Adam Thielen. That's really only guy I would consider trusting in this matchup this week here. He's the only one that's been producing on a week-to-week basis. He's seeing the targets in the offense right now. DJ Shark, not really trying to trust him. Neither am I trusting Jonathan Mingo. Not trusting the tight end Hayden Hurst this week at all. It's really just Adam Thielen as a flex option for the Lions. Jameson Williams is supposed to play today, but I think he's going to be based on a limited snap count this week here. So I really don't want to play Jameson Williams in his first game back. Again, he hasn't proved anything that makes me trust him for a flexible option this week. In fantasy football, you have to be like in a deep man league, and you're losing bye weeks right now. I like Josh Reynolds as a solid, borderline flex play this week. He should be solid. A nice deep sleeper play is Khalif Raymond that would likely play the slot role a little bit this week with Amon St. Brown likely out. So I do like him kind of in fantasy this week as well. Sam Laporta is probably going to hopefully be the biggest winner. Hopefully he sees the target leading share in this offense here as kind of Jared Goff's, trusted weapon in the offense here. And again, he's a tight end 1 right now, and he's probably going to be a tight end 1 the rest of the season unless something dramatic happens to him this week. So, all right, over the Colts-Titans game, another first divisional game of the weekend here. For the quarterbacks, Ryan Tannehill is an okay super flex play. The Colts do allow a lot of passing yards to quarterbacks this season. Anthony Richardson is obviously a must start right now. He is just performing at the right level in fantasy football right now. I mean, he's just playing as an RB1. He's seen 40 rushing yards per game and a touchdown. It's really great. This is a great question here. How do you feel about starting Zach Ertz over George Kittle today? I don't hate it at all. Actually, I think it could be a smart move. With George Kittle, I always say you're starting George Kittle as a boom or bust tight end. He could give you 2 points in a given week, or he can give you 25. And that's what you have to live by with George Kittle. I mean, if you're planning on starting George Kittle, you have to know that he's going to either do big or he's going to just do absolutely nothing. Zach Ertz has seen a pretty nice target share this season so far. I believe he leads the team in targets. I think he's second on the team on targets right now. And the matchup is great. The Bengals, they give up the third most fantasy points per game to tight ends this year. And you know what? I'm okay with starting Zach Ertz over George Kittle, and because George Kittle does have a tough matchup with the Cowboys. So I'm okay with it. I think you're going to get a nice happy medium with Zach Ertz compared to the boom or bust appeal with George Kittle's been giving us. And the one big thing the Bengals have been doing is giving up a lot of touchdowns to tight ends. Zach Ertz hasn't caught one yet. So I think today could be the day he does catch one. I don't hate that whatsoever. So, but I understand if you're just going to continue to start George Kittle because he's George Kittle, but don't hate the Zach Ertz play this week for sure. Where was I here? The running backs for this team here. Jonathan Taylor is obviously returning back in fantasy this week here. Do you play him? I think you can flex him. I believe he will share this load at least the first week with Zach Moss, and that's what they said. But I wouldn't have high hopes because the Titans are a really good defense. Jonathan Taylor has only averaged like 49 yards in 4 career games or 5 career games versus the Titans. And he hasn't scored a touchdown against them yet. So I wouldn't expect too much from Jonathan Taylor this week, but you can do enough with him that you can play him as I guess your RB2 if you're really that weak at running back. I wouldn't recommend it per se if you could avoid it. Zach Moss, obviously, I'm not trusting Zach Moss today at all. On the other side, Derrick Henry's an RB1 in this matchup. Colts give up a lot of rushing yards this week. I think Tajay Spears could be a kind of a sleeper option in fantasy football for you this week. Not a bad play on his part. But again, it has to be a little bit more of a deeper league kind of play with him. The pass catchers for these teams. Michael Pittman's the only one I'm really trusting on both sides, to be honest. I think he's a pretty solid wide receiver too. He doesn't have the greatest career against the Titans, but he's got a better quarterback finally, and I think he'll be good enough that you can start him in fantasy this week. So I'm pretty okay with starting him this week in fantasy. I'm not really starting to start Alec Pierce, Josh Downs. I'm not starting the tight ends for the Colts. On the Titan side of the ball, I'm not really trying to start anyone there besides maybe DeAndre Hopkins. He's the only one that I would consider starting at this moment, just because it's just kind of hard to trust him right now in fantasy. He's seeing the targets, but he's not seeing the snap shares that we really want in fantasy. But again, he's a flexible option at best right now. So that's really all I have to say about, a guy like DeAndre Hopkins, but obviously like Nick Westbrook and Keenan, I'm not trusting his 50 yards for a touchdown like he did last week here. So I'm not really worried about that. And I'm not trusting Chigo Conquo right now because he's not getting the targets that we need in this offense here. So yeah, definitely not the best game for fantasy owners besides Anthony Richardson, to be honest, this week. So next game on the docket here. Let's see. The Giants-Dolphins. My Dolphins against the Giants this week. For the quarterback situation, you have to start Tua still. He's just a top-tier quarterback that's playing at a high level, and you have to take the good and the bad with his games here. And this should be a good, hopefully, for him this week here. For the Giants, it's really risky to go out there and start, a guy like Daniel Jones. It's really tough because the matchup is such a favorable matchup, and he's had some pretty tough matchups this season here. But you have to be pretty risky. I prefer to use him in a super flex kind of role than I am in a one quarterback league. Like I'll be okay. Like I'll trust him in a super flex QB2 spot. So I prefer that situation on that note. So the running backs, you start Devon A-Chain, obviously. I think you can start Raheem Mostert as a flex option. I think he'll be okay as a flexible play this week in fantasy. I'm pretty okay with that. On the flip side, Saquon Barkley looks like he's not playing in this week's matchup. So Matt Breida would be back at the starting running back position here. Again, he's an okay flex. He's been doing enough. He's seeing a touchdown in each game so far. I don't know how reliable that is each and every single week, having touchdowns only. But it's good enough for me that if you're in a desperate pinch for, a tight end right now, for running back, that you can start him in this matchup this week. So I'm kind of okay with that. Go back to the pass catchers now. You start Tyreek, you start Jalen Waddle. Not starting anyone else in the Dolphins pass catching role today. The Giants side, Darren Waller is obviously a fine tight end one because it's just hard to find tight end ones in fantasy. The only pass catcher that I would consider starting for the Giants is Wan'Dale Robinson. He's seeing 6 targets in back-to-back games now, and this is a favorable matchup for him in the slot. So I would be okay going ahead and going with him this week in fantasy. So he's fine. Over the next game, because this game was kind of not a lot of fantasy options out on. We're mostly one-sided here. This one's kind of sucky too. The Saints Patriots here. This one isn't the best game that I really want to talk about, but gotta go through the motions here, guys. For the Saints side, Derek Carr hopefully is a little bit better than we've seen in the last week, hopefully, but I still don't trust him. The Patriots are pretty good against fantasy quarterbacks this season here. Same goes for Mac Jones. They're not really trying to start Mac Jones. Saints are pretty good at stopping fantasy quarterbacks. I don't think either this game will be a very high scoring game, nor I see a ton of passing yards on either side of the game. So it's going to come down to the running backs, I think. And Alvin Kamara, he's a low end tight end, low end RB1 that you have to play. I think you obviously have to hope that you continue to see that high target share and receptions this week because he's been doing so much with it this year. I'm really excited to see what he's able to do in week 2. Hopefully, he continues to see high target share. Again, it's not sustainable, but I still want to see it. Ramondre Stevenson, I'm going back to starting him. I think this is a game where he kind of gets back on track with his receiving ability. And I am very excited to see what he's able to do and hopefully get some more opportunity this week in fantasy for us. So I do like Ramondre in this week. Zeke's not trying to start Zeke Elliott. For the pass catchers, still want to go back to Chris Olave. You had to kind of probably lower expectations. It's hard not to keep him as a wide receiver one, but you have to lower expectations. Michael Thomas not really trying to start. Raheem Shaheen not trying to start. I'm not starting a tight end for the Saints because I don't know who it is. Maybe Jimmy Graham this week here. I don't really want to deal with that situation. So on the flip side, again, the Patriots, who am I starting at wide receiver? I really don't want to start any of the wide receivers. Like I can't pinpoint one wide receiver that I'm like, all right, he might have an opening for a good day. It could be anyone. It could literally be anyone. That's the worst thing you can do for fantasy football. Start a guy that you have absolutely no idea who's going to get a good target share or not in fantasy. Hunter Henry, tough matchup, but if you're desperate for a tight end, he should probably give you enough in fantasy to be quite okay. So I don't hate that. No one else really in this game like really sticks. This is a really another shitty game, guys. Really don't want to talk more about this one. Ravens Steelers, nice divisional game here. These teams play each other really tough. I think their average total points in the last 5 games have been like 29. They're really low scoring games from both sides here. Lamar Jackson, you start as a quarterback one, obviously. It's not the best matchup for him, but you still got to start him. Kenny Pickett, you're not starting him whatsoever. Obviously, he's low mobility, they said in this game here. Yeah, I don't want any part of that for fantasy this week here. For the running backs, Gus Edwards is fine. People had him much higher this week. I just don't really see it. I mean, yeah, he's a fine RB3 that you could flex. But again, there's no upside in this game. He doesn't pass the ball all that much. So I really don't want to play him in fantasy. So I just prefer to kind of avoid him and start somewhere else if I can. But he's fine. He's fine. On the other side, Najee Harris, Jalen Warren. I probably prefer to start Jalen Warren this week. Especially with Kenny Pickett's inability to move that much in the pocket, he might dump it off a ton. And Jalen Warren could be in favorable of that. Najee Harris is, again, they're both RB3s, flex options at best. But Najee Harris could be in for a bad day as well. I'm not really overly got to start either one of those running backs on either side of the ball, to be honest. Pass catchers, Zay Flowers is a good start. Like I said, I like Zay Flowers. He's a good PPR machine. He's going to see enough targets to be very valuable as a flex play this week and a confident flex play. Mark Andrews is a tight end one, obviously, but just note, Mark Andrews never scored a touchdown against the Steelers ever. So that could be very interesting for fantasy today. So keep that in mind when starting Mark Andrews this week. Steelers side of the ball, not really trying to start any Steelers. George Pickens is okay flex play maybe at best, but I'm really trying to start him in fantasy football this year right now. We got a question, Marcos. All right. This should be fun. Puka or Brandon Ayuk, half-point PPR? Thanks. Oh man, this is an interesting question, obviously, because the way Puka has been playing so well and Brandon Ayuk here, man, this one is tough because when we see Brandon Ayuk playing in a full game, he is dominating this year. And obviously we know Cooper Kupp's coming back for Puka this week here. Man, if I had to pick one, man, that is tough. I think I would lean Puka still. I think I'm still trusting him as my as my wide receiver that's just been dominant this year, I'm concerned about Cooper Cup, but I'm not concerned enough that Puka still won't have a big role in this offense. But man, it's really hard to sit Brandon. You got to have you're having a great situation sitting these guys right now, one of these two guys this week there. So hats off to you. I think you can go either direction, to be honest. Go with your gut at the end of the day, but I think I'd lean towards Puka. All right. So over to my next one here. Let me just drop this comment real quick here. Over to the next. What was I? Oh, I was on the Steelers. I'm sorry. Yeah, George Pickens, the only one I consider starting this week. I'm not starting anyone else in this lineup. Pat Frymuth's already out this week here, so I'm not trying to start anyone there. Um, Colts Rams. This one. Oh no, that was an old one. I'm sorry. That one should not be there. And neither should half these, but that's okay. There we go. The Rams Eagles here. There we go. Rams Eagles. This one should be fun and exciting here. Obviously, I think this one is going to be a much higher scoring game here for the quarterbacks. Jalen Hurts, QB1, obviously. Matthew Stafford, I'm really hoping for a big game for Matthew Stafford, but he hasn't really shown us that big game yet. So I'm hoping this is that big game. He's kind of risky. I think he's better off as a mid-range QB2, but I think he could end up finishing as a QB1 this week in fantasy. For the running backs, you start DeAndre Swift. He's been fantastic. You got to continue with that motion with him. Kenny Gainwell, I'm not really trying to stop him. Flip side of the bar, Kerryon Williams is the toughest matchup in fantasy this week for running backs, but he's just finding ways to score touchdowns. And again, I don't want to say that touchdowns are hard to continue to be a consistent factor, but he's finding ways to be productive with the ball. And if he continues to score touchdowns and sees receptions, I'm all kind of game for him this week here. So I'm still going to start Kerryon Williams. For the wide receivers, you look at obviously Devonta Smith and AJ Brown. Obviously, you start both those guys. You confirm that they're going to be fine in fantasy this week. Dallas Goedert, just have lower your expectations. He's still startable, but he just got to lower the expectation for what he's able to do. On the flip side, obviously Cooper Kupp is back in the lineup this week here. But do we play Cooper Kupp? Yeah, you have to play Cooper Kupp. I think you just got to throw him out there and hope for the best with him. You've been holding on for him for 4 weeks now. You have to just throw him out there and see what he's able to do. He's going to go at 100% today. So I still want to play him. I still want to play Puka. I like Puka a lot still. I think he's going to be a big game. Tutu Atwell definitely suffers a little bit. I don't really trust him as confidently with Cooper Kupp back on the field. Van Jefferson off radars. Tyler Higbee. It's a tougher matchup than shown on paper, and I'm not really trying to start Tyler Higbee this week if I can avoid it. So Bengals Cardinals. This one is going to be, I think, in favorable of the Cardinals, which is a freaking surprise for fantasy football right now. But for the quarterbacks, I'm not really trying to start Joe Burrow. He just hasn't shown me anything that I can trust him enough to play him this week here. And I'd like to avoid Joe Burrow if I can. I understand if you can't, but I prefer to avoid Joe Burrow if I can. On the flip side, Joshua Dobbs is a solid superflex quarterback that I'm considering playing. Honestly, I really like that. I don't hate that. Honestly, I like what he's able to do. So I'm kind of game for him this week here. So I do like Joshua Dobbs a lot. Running backs, Joe Mixon is going to eat this week. He is going to be in for his big day, and I'm excited for that. So I'm excited for a Joe Mixon kind of big day. I think James Conner's a good start this week. Obviously, still I'm fine with him. Wide receivers and pass catchers, Jamar Chase, you got to start Jamar Chase. You just have to. With T. Higgins out, you have to start Jamar Chase. Not really trying to start Tyler Boyd. Just hasn't shown anything when he's given an opportunity this year. On the Cardinal side, Hollywood Brown's a good flex. Michael Wilson's more of like a boom or bust flex if you want to go after that route there. Zach Ertz, I love Zach Ertz today. I think he's going to be in for a really not strong day. Seeing the target share on the offense here, and the Bengals are terrible against tight ends this year. So I mentioned that multiple times this week. Jets Broncos here. This one could be a low scoring game, but I'm not really sure about that. Russell Wilson's an okay super flex start. Zach Wilson's is an interesting sleeper at quarterback this week for Superflex leagues. Intrigued to see if he can make it back-to-back games that are good. For the running backs, Breece Hall, he got to unleash Breece Hall this week. He's going to be fantastic. Not really trying to start Dalvin Cook, but I get why you might want to consider it, but I'm not really trying to. For the Broncos running backs, we have to find out if Javonte Williams is playing or not. If Javonte Williams plays, I really don't want to start any of these Broncos this week. Don't really want to trust them. It's just if they're going to turn into a 3-person carousel, not really trying to avoid that. Trying to avoid that. If Javonte Williams is out, Jalen McLaughlin is somebody I am interested in starting in fantasy this week as a flex option. I think there's a big upside game for him this week here versus the Jets, who are terrible against the run this year. I would love to start him, but it's only if Javonte Williams is out this week. For the pass catchers, you start Garrett Wilson. You just got to start Garrett Wilson. He should be fine. Tyler Conklin's an interesting sleeper tight end. Broncos have given up a good amount to tight ends this year. On the other side of the ball, Cortland Sutton is the only one I'm really trusting. He's the only one that's seeing a solid connection with with Russell Wilson, and also seeing the red zone work. Jerry Judy's fine, but it's kind of hard to see if he's going to get covered by Sauce Gardner all game. And really, there's no one else there I really want to consider starting. Chiefs Vikings game, then this is over the biggest game of the weekend here, and I'm really hoping it is the big game of the weekend where it's like a 35-38 kind of finish here. Starting both quarterbacks, you start Pat Mahomes, you start Kirk Cousins. I think those are pretty obvious points in fantasy this week here. I think you go after you don't really go after the running backs. Isaiah Pacheco's fine as the RB2. I'm not really trying to start Alexander Madison or Cam Akers this week here. I'm just trying to avoid that whole situation. For the wide receivers, you start Justin Jefferson. I think you can start Jordan Addison. The slot is where the Chiefs don't do as well for fantasy. So I'm okay starting Jordan Addison. TJ Hawkinson, got to start TJ Hawkinson. For the flip side, you start Travis Kelce. I think this could be a Rashad Rashid big game this week here. And Sky Moore, this is his last chance for me for any shot for this season. Yeah, this is the last chance I'm going to give him in a very favorable matchup, but don't preferably want to start him. Cowboys 49ers, this is the night game tonight here. This is tough because both defenses are an elite defense this year. Dak Prescott and Brock Purdy are better off as QB2s in Superflex leagues. Don't really want to start them. I'm not thrilled to start them. Tony Pollard, you just got to go ahead and start. CMC, go ahead and start, obviously. For the wide receiver, the pass catchers, CeeDee Lamb, you start. Brandon Ayuk, you got to start. Outside of that, it's like Debo's fine, but his injury concerns me that he's not 100% for this game and a tough matchup. I don't know how well he's going to do. He's more of a flex play. Again, I mentioned George Kittle already. Boom or bust option, honestly, in fantasy. You start him and hope for the best. Jake Ferguson's a nice tight end this week to play. He's just seeing the target share even in a tough matchup, so not a bad play. And then the Monday Night Football game, last game of the night, guys. Packers Raiders here. I like Jordan Love a lot this week here. He should be fine in this matchup. The Raiders don't give up a ton, but they give a lot of touchdowns, and that's kind of where Jordan Love thrives, more of touchdowns than yardage. Jimmy G, not the greatest play I want to play them this week here. I'm not thrilled with his matchup overall. It's just the Packers are really good at stopping passing. They're really sucky at the run, so that's why I'm kind of like Jimmy G might not have the best week for fantasy. For the running backs, I'm only really trying to play Aaron Jones as a flex play, and obviously Josh Jacobs is an RB1 this week. For the pass catchers here, my highest pass catcher for the Packers is Romeo Doubs. I think he's got the strong connection with Jordan Love that I'm trusting that this week in this matchup here. Christian Watson's a fine boomer bust flex play. Jaden Reed's better in deeper man leagues, and he's fine. Luke Musgrave, I'm not thrilled to start Luke Musgrave, but he's okay. His target share moving forward is concerning. For the Raiders, Devontae Adams, you start him if he plays. Jacoby Myers and Jimmy G both do well when they play together and play in the same game. So I'm trusting Jacoby Myers to have a good game. And that's really about it for the pass catchers for the Raiders. So, but yeah, that's gonna wrap me up today, guys. 28 minutes, not bad. I said under 30 minutes to do this. Again, if you have any Final Fantasy questions, throw them in the chat here. Greatly appreciated. I love doing these little Sunday fun days. Getting like a good 30 minutes in, talking about every single player possible that I can, and kind of going through the motions there. So again, please tune in every Sunday. I don't know, sometime between 9:30 and 10:30. I'll do like a nice 30-minute episode. And if you want to listen to the fantasy coaches during this week, please do so. Every Monday and Thursday, 5:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We go live on Mondays talking waivers. On Thursdays, we go live talking starts and sits. And it's not just your typical busts and sleepers. We get into the nitty-gritty of every game under an hour. So I thank you all for listening. Tune in until next time, guys, and good luck on your Sunday.